Hi, Seth David here from nerdenterprises.com, and I'm proud to announce that Make It Work is now carrying my videos on their financial help desk. Please visit www.blog.makeitwork.com/financial help desk with dashes in between each word. So it's financial-help-desk. If you go there, you'll see my videos on the Make It Work blog. Make It Work is the company that will bring you a stress-free digital lifestyle. Visit their website if you need any kind of computer help at all. Give them a call at 877-MAKE-IT-WORK, 625-3489. That's 877-625-3489. In the last QuickBooks webcast, you saw an introduction to QuickBooks and the various file types. This time I want to talk about the first thing you often have to do in QuickBooks: set up your QuickBooks company file. The file QuickBooks creates is a .qbw file, which stands for QuickBooks Working. Don't try this at home. I want to suggest that if you don't have any background experience with accounting and QuickBooks, you should really consult with a professional bookkeeper or accountant when setting up your company file. I'm available, and there are also many others out there who can help you. It might seem simple enough, but there are things you may not be aware of that should be considered when setting your company up in QuickBooks. The core of the setup process is in setting up your chart of accounts. So having a look at QuickBooks here, QuickBooks gives you templates to work off of based on your industry, and you can start with one of those. You can also add accounts that you need and remove ones that you don't need as you go. So don't worry about having the perfect setup right off the bat, but it is useful, obviously, to start off with one of their templates so you have that as kind of a guide. These days it becomes important to put your company file in a folder where it will be easy to find. I usually recommend creating a folder for your company, and within that a folder called Accounting. This is where I like to place my clients' QuickBooks files because it makes sense, and the bottom line is I can find it in 30 seconds or less when I need it to transfer to someone like the CPA or to myself from their computer and so on. So now that we know where we're going to put the company file, we are ready to create it. As I mentioned, we want to create a folder called Your Company, whatever your company is called, and within that we like to create a folder called Accounting, and that's where I like to put the QuickBooks file. And it's good to set that location up before you start, which you're going to see why in just a second. Switching back over to QuickBooks, what I want to do is, when I've got no company file open, there's a very clear-cut button here that says Create a New Company, and that of course is what I want to click on to, guess what? Create a new company. Isn't that brilliant? Now, we can do the interview, which you can do. I'm not going to for this purpose because that would sort of replace me in a sense. So if you're totally lost, then use the interview. Or as I said, consult with somebody to get some help. But the interview will walk you through a very long series of questions to help you get your company file set up. So if you have zero bookkeeping or accounting experience, I recommend doing that. The other option you'll see here is converting data, which you can do, as you can see, from Quicken, Peachtree, Small Business Accounting, or Office Accounting. And the choice I'm going to choose is to skip the interview, because again, you can do that on your own. You don't need me. So the company name is Your Company Inc. We'll assume that's the same legal name. Obviously, you want to put your tax ID in here. It's important to fill in this information because this information will populate forms, invoices. If you do payroll, it will grab your tax ID for the payroll form. So it's really important to fill all this out in its entirety. You definitely want to put an email and a website address here because, again, you can then populate your invoice templates and so on with that information. Coming over here, I'm going to pretend it's an S Corp. I recommend an S Corp for all new small businesses. There are tax reasons why we do this, which I can't get into now, but you're welcome to send in your questions. We'll click Next. Fiscal year always starts in January unless you elect otherwise. Now over here is the list of templates that I was talking about earlier, where you can choose based on your industry which one best fits. So you go down this list and pick something that suits you, and let's say that we are an accounting or bookkeeping business. I'll just go with that. So I'm going to choose that, and it gives you a sample of the accounts it's going to create here. It's not just a sample, it's the whole list. So we can choose that, and then we can choose Next. And next it's going to actually create the company file, and QuickBooks will prompt us for where we want to put this file. And that's why I said it's good to set up the location ahead of time, because now I can come in here, I can select the whole file path, I can copy it. Sorry Mac users, you can't do this. And I can paste the file path in where it says file name. I hit save and it takes me right into that location, and it's already ready to save my company based on the name yourcompanyinc.qbw. And if you put a period after the Inc. when you named it, take the extra period out. That's an anal thing on my part, but it is kind of annoying. So once you've got that in place, click Save, and QuickBooks will do its thing and create your company file. It does take a minute or two. QuickBooks will start you off with this lovely home screen, which, if you're not familiar with it, it might help, especially if you're brand new to QuickBooks, it might help you to take some time to look this over. It breaks down your company into logical groups or sections. You have your vendors. You have your company section, which is things that apply sort of globally to the company. Your banking section, which is, of course, banking activities, writing checks, going into your check register, recording deposits, and so on. You have your customer section and, of course, your employees section. So it might not hurt you to have a look at this, spend some time with it, and you can click on any of these icons to get right into the related feature of QuickBooks. The last thing I want to show you in terms of setting up your company file is going to your chart of accounts, because as I mentioned earlier, that is essentially what you're creating when you create the company file. You're laying down the infrastructure, and the chart of accounts is the entire infrastructure of your accounting file, of your company file. And the first thing you're going to need to do is create a bank account. QuickBooks doesn't do that for you because it doesn't know who you bank with. So we go down to account here, as I've done, and you click on new, and the type is going to be bank. It gives you the logical types first when you're creating a bank account, but if what you're looking to create doesn't fit, then this drop down lists all the other categories for account types that you might need. Bank account's right there because it's common enough. And we click over here and we call it your bank. And I always like to append the accounts on the books, bank accounts and credit card accounts, with the last four digits in the account number, for the simple reason that if I have multiple accounts at the same institution, it helps me to distinguish one account from the other. And it makes a big difference, especially when you have a lot of accounts on the books. Clicking OK will finish it, and of course QuickBooks wants to know if you want to set it up online, which if you can, I strongly suggest that you do. It will save you a ton of time, but that's for another tutorial. Now you'll see your chart of accounts, and you can go through and look, does the income accounts that it created describe accurately what I want? In my case, it doesn't, because I have lots of different services. I have my accounting services, yes, and I also have bookkeeping services. I don't have tax prep services. Actually, I do now, but I have also my learning center, and I have revenue from classes that I do, whether it's live one-on-one or classes people can download in my learning center. I have other income streams that I need to reflect here. So you just saw how to create a new account. You'll do the same thing to make sure you have all the income accounts that you need to properly capture and categorize your streams of income. To me, that's one of the most important things in setting up your company file, and it's also one of the most exciting because I get to stop for a minute and take a look at what are my streams of income, what activities am I engaged in that produce income for my company, and I can think about it and get creative and come up with new ideas as I'm doing it. So to me, that's a very important part. The expenses are here, and it starts you off with a basic set of expense accounts, and the reality is for this is, in my experience, you're almost better off creating this as you go. So as you're entering transactions, which we'll go over in a future segment in QuickBooks, as you're creating transactions, you will have the opportunity to create the account you need for that transaction. Be careful there. If you're going off on your own and doing it, you don't want to create a new account for every different transaction. That sort of defeats the purpose. You want to have good, logical, broad categories that describe very well the nature of the expense, so that when you go to run a profit and loss, you get a report that's easy enough to read. If I have this huge profit and loss with a long list of accounts, I can get lost in it very quickly and easily. And I've found in my experience, most small businesses do not use that level of detail ever. My email address is seth@nerdenterprises.com. Feel free to send in your questions, and I'll be happy to answer them or possibly even use them in one of our webcasts. I look forward to seeing you on the web.